from robot racism in an alternate 90s
to real, actual racism in the late 1800s.
This week, we'll be discussing the electric state and the searchers.
This is The Film Angle.
Welcome to The Film Angle, a podcast where we dive deep into the latest releases and unearth the classics to better our cinephilic curiosity. I'm Kris.
And I'm Alex.
Well, let's get into it.
Kris, how have you been?
I'm doing wonderful, Alex. Really, really good.
Have you had a busy cinema week? Have you been watching a lot?
Yes, we'll be discussing this later on, but it's been a week of highs and lows. Of people who coming into this episode who've seen both of these films, so we're going to talk about. I'll let you guess which one's which. What about you, man?
I'm trying to think what I've been watching. It's funny. I obviously we're gonna be talking about a Netflix film product later with the Electric State, and then I also watched another Netflix thing which did really impress me. But it was a TV show, so now mixed feelings on the whole streaming service again, and you're like, God damn it!
Oh, is this the TV show with Stephen Graham, the Adolescence thing? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Have you watched any of it? Don't tell me anything. So
I
I'm
haven't.
only 2 episodes in.
I haven't, but I've just heard of the phenomena that everybody says is like one of the best things on TV in some time.
Well, I was thinking, did we watch Boiling Point very early on in our podcast?
We did.
Was it episode 1? I don't think was it?
No.
Couldn't
be. It didn't feel like episode 1. We sure did discuss it at some point early in the show.
Yeah.
I'm confident to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just trying to think. When did Boiling Point come out? Let me have a quick look. It
was a lot of UV, wasn't it? Yeah.
7th of January 2022. Do you know what?
Mm-hmm.
That makes me think that it was our first episode.
Damn. Okay, so obviously the relation is Stephen Graham, but what else?
The director.
Oh, okay.
And I guess you could say, filming technique of a one-shot. So Boiling Point was a one-shot film made to look like, in real time, the inner workings of this kitchen and the kind of stress mounting up with Stephen Graham's character. Adolescence kind of takes that, but in a TV format, and each episode is a one shot.
Oh, well, I was not expecting that from the show, actually.
Yeah, so each episode, it's a 4-part series,
mm-hmm.
and it's all about a young child who has murdered a girl, stabbed a young girl. And it's not based on a true story, but I guess almost like inspired by kind of the rising epidemic of knife crime, especially around like young men in this country. So, and the kind of influence of people like Andrew Tate and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
only
okay.
2 episodes in. There's more to come for me to find out. But yeah, this one-shot takes, man, they're so good. And now you can only assume, because like with most things, they aren't done, in full. Like there are some little magical cuts here and there.
Of course. The camera moves across the doorway yeah.
And most of the time you can go like, that was probably a cut.
Mm-hmm.
Seamless. More so in episode 1 than episode 2. There's a couple times where like, I wonder if they cut there, but not enough to be like, it's more like my filmmaking brain going, where's the cut? Where's the cut? But this thing is seamless. It's so well done.
And it doesn't seem like indulgent. Like I always struggle a little bit with like works from Inarritu, for example, where I always feel like that's a little bit like, okay, this is flair over subject matter sometimes.
I guess. I don't know. I want to say the subject matter lends itself to it.
Intensity.
In the way of like the intensity and the scariness of it all. And obviously allowing it to play out in real time. So it's like, how would you process a child? How would you arrest them, get them through the system, interrogate them, all this kind of stuff. So like it's quite almost like you're almost like a fly on the wall, and it's very interesting to know how that whole process runs as well. And obviously it's not a documentary. I think episode 2 takes a few more kind of creative liberties. There's a shot where it goes from like watching somebody walking to all of a sudden it flies above the town and then lands in another location to hit like another character, not hit them, but like to shoot their scene. Yeah. And I was like, well, clearly there's some computer imagery going on here, but I saw a clip that Netflix released today where they're literally filming and somebody is hooking a drone up to the camera whilst the cameraman's walking. Somebody's above him hooking up a drone, and they fly the camera off, and then the shot is done in camera. And you're just like, that is very, 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 very cool.
That's great. Because I guess like drone camera footage, even though how high the fidelity is, always does end up looking a little bit like a CGI shot. It's just the way like drone tech is. So, that's really cool that they actually went to that effort, because they could have just cut a corner. Done just digitally.
It does make me think as well, like obviously because we are talking about the filmmaking technique, everybody's going like, wow, look at how this was filmed, and it's going to bring more people in to watch it. Whereas maybe that was part of the reason, we're going to get more viewers by doing this in a kind of spectacle way, because actually the story and the message around knife crime and young men and the influences is actually like quite a one that kind of needs to be told right now.
Yeah,
it's quite a powerful one. Yeah. So it makes me think whether even just using that technique was like, we got to try and bring people in. Now, obviously you bring people in anyway to say like, there's a drama with Stephen Graham. People go mad anyway.
Yes.
But like, I don't know if I would have like, I'll be like, oh, another kind of like depressing British drama. I don't know if I'm going to watch that. But when I heard about the one shot stuff, I heard about the, the director, I should probably say director's name. We keep saying the director, Philip Barantini. Who did Boiling Point.
I didn't know that it was him behind the project, even coming up to this conversation. But I think it just shows you the power of word of mouth and how much that goes a long way. People just talking in the office, or just people talking to their friends. I've seen a lot of good stuff about this on the internet, and I've heard people at work talking about it too. So now you're on it, that gives me good cause to jump on it too, Alex. I think it sounds really interesting.
Only 4 episodes, and I'm rubbish at catching up with TV in its kind of like immediacy. It only came out like on Friday, so I'm proud of myself, Chris.
Some people like we're film people, and we struggle to keep up with films as it is. But there's loads of people like I get so impressed with the people in my work who just like bashing out like 3 series in a weekend, and I'm just like, I can't even do that.
I know it's difficult, isn't it? I find myself, because I guess my fiance's job is so demanding and stuff like that, like sometimes we just need to switch off.
You don't really want to watch
we end up watching a lot of rubbish TV, and then when I get a chance I watch films. Something has to give, doesn't it? We've said this before. You and I are lovers of like all the mediums of kind of visual storytelling. We love films, we love TV, we love video games. And then on top of that, we also love like music and podcasting and all that kind of stuff. You can only do so like be in the zeitgeist of so many of those at one time. And obviously we have to be films. That's the one that doesn't. Yeah. That's the one that doesn't get cancelled.
You're right.
So then we got to pick. You got time for TV, got time for music. All right, TV's going to the wayside because we've got a new video game, and then it's like, all right, music's going to the wayside because I'm really into like podcasts at the moment. I probably do listen to more podcasts and music, but then I hit a good song, and I'm like, now I have to listen to all the music.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like I think it's quite like it's quite a kick in the teeth when you're like, right, I gotta do one properly, and I guess I've just got to be like a jack of all trades with all the rest of them, and it kind of sucks because you just wish like you get into some sort of like some sort of time capsule, some sort of time traveling technique where you just like live each day just like 20 times and just knock them all out. But you know what? I'd rather live life wanting more than be sick of everything. So if I'm like lacking in reading at the moment, which I certainly am, I think that's like the biggest one.
Yes.
I'm talking to you about that sort of stuff
because I've really gotten back into it.
Yeah,
Which is it's probably
which
that
is
thing
inspiring.
of like, yeah, but it's probably that thing as well because you love your video games and you're like, oh, Alex, you need to play this video game, and I'm like,
But they're so time consuming.
They are so time consuming. I get such little time to do that. They're not as easy to share in an experience sometimes as well. You know, if you're sitting there with your partner. I know it's not always the case, but sometimes it's if I'm playing video games, it's quite a selfish use of the TV.
Oh God, I feel like a terrible person. I tried to do like the running commentary thing, just that usually like try to turn into my inner streamer when I play a video game, just to keep it sort of entertaining. But yeah, no, like enough. I guess enough insight into our mental fortitudes and our lackings as media consumers.
This is not how I envisioned the start of the episode, but it was quite nice.
Well, therapy is over. We're here. First of all, I guess the big one, or what they want us to believe is the big one. Today is the Electric State, the newest big behemoth from the Russo Brothers, starring Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt. As soon as I logged on to my Netflix account, Alex, I've never had this with any Netflix film before, where they were so desperate for me to watch this movie, where I turned on my Netflix, I didn't click anything, and my whole page just became the Electric State Watch Now. It took the whole of my TV, and it just turned into the poster with literally like a link to play now. Like I had no option. I was forced to watch this movie. whether you like it or not, you're going to be watching the Electric State on Netflix.
Forced by me and Netflix to watch the Electric State. I guess maybe our kind of longer than usual opening was a insight into how we want to maybe put off the inevitable. But yeah, Netflix have made another film, and I guess what's interesting about this film is not that, it's got Millie Bobby Brown yet again in another kind of Netflix big budget film. The Russo brothers are involved. We've seen them do Netflix stuff before as well. I guess the big thing here is that the film's production budget was apparently $320 million. It's Netflix's most expensive movie to date. I think confirmed? That puts that up there in like top 10 most expensive films of all time.
Has this been like completely like signed off that this figure is correct? Because we'll get into it. I don't see the money. Do you see the money in this movie when you watch it?
I mean, it's difficult to know because obviously it's very effects heavy.
Yeah.
So maybe there's that, and then it's also quite star heavy. So you got Chris Pratt, who is a movie star, whether you like him or not. He's a movie star. Mario, Garfield, Guardians of the Galaxy,
Garfield,
Lego Movie. He does all the voices. People, audiences love Chris Pratt, so he's an expensive movie star. Then you've got so many other people in there. You got Woody Harrelson, Giancarlo Esposito, Anthony Mackie's in there, isn't he? At some point,
sure,
Stanley Tucci,
Alan Tudyk, Jenny Slate,
yes. I'm blanking on all of them, but you're right. And then Millie Bobby Brown's probably on like a retainer, but she is Netflix's star, so that they are probably going to pay her pretty handsomely for it.
Yeah, Netflix, like she is to Netflix what Judy Garland was for MGM back in the day. It's like this is our poster girl,
but surprisingly doesn't seem to translate outside of Netflix. But also, I guess she hasn't had much of a chance to too much outside of Netflix.
Well, she does,
and that might be by her own doing, which is fair enough. Netflix have kind of looked after her since she was a kid. Can understand the loyalty.
And she's like an entrepreneur as well. Like she has a lot of brands, personal like makeup and perfume brands and stuff like that. So she's like a very busy person. So
I didn't know that.
When you have you have a good when your partner works with cosmetics and stuff like that, you kind of get to know what products are out there. And yes, she has a very, very popular perfume brand. Yeah, like there's a lot of big stars in this, obviously, but like, I don't think any of these stars, if you were to put all of them into a pot and put all their how much that they cost to be in this movie, I don't think that they equal the budget it would have cost to have Daniel Radcliffe in your movie and peak Harry Potter. You know what I mean? So like, it's crazy to me that this movie costs this much. But like, this money just disappears into the ether with these projects.
That's interesting. That's such an interesting. I don't know why I'm picking up on the fact that you said Daniel Radcliffe in Harry Potter, but that's just an interesting.
Well, at one point, he was the highest paid actor in the world when he did that.
Was he?
Yeah. He was like bigger. He was earning more than Tom Cruise at that point in his life.
No way! I didn't know that. I was just assumed they were like, he's a kid. Give him a 3% pay rise.
Well, I remember him being in the Guinness World Records for like highest paid actor. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Interesting.
Do not fact check me, listeners, please.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, it is based on a book. Maybe the rights to the book were expensive. It is difficult to know where it went, but the visual effects, like, if I was going to say, like, because I think probably the listeners can probably tell that we're not like big on this film. So if I was going to say anything good, I thought the visual effects held up pretty nicely. Like, I thought it looked like a good computer film.
Like, the visual effects are rendered very well. The problem is that every single design in this movie is god ugly to me. Like, everything is the wrong choice. Like, I don't like any of these robots, automatons, drones. I don't even like any sets in this movie. This movie just looks hideous to me.
Yeah. I mean, some of the outside areas look quite nice.
I mean, desert, tabletop. I mean, you can't get that wrong, can you?
Yeah, that's true.
Should we talk about what the movie's about?
Yeah, do it. Tell me.
That's always the thing with like movies that you kind of go in preloaded to kind of not sort of shit on, but maybe today that is how it's going to go. But you kind of you forget to kind of talk about what the movie is about because you're just so excited. So The Electric State is obviously a 2025 Netflix film produced and written by Anthony and Joe Russo, but it's based on the 2018 illustrated novel by Simon Stalenhag. So basically, it centers around Michelle, played by Millie Bobby Brown, who is an orphaned teenager who hits the road with a mysterious robot who she suspects has the soul of her recently deceased younger brother. This robot can't communicate, only through like pre-recorded dialogue that's inbuilt into it. So
which is a little bit Bumblebee from Transformers.
Oh, super Bumblebee. It's trying to be that and a little bit of E.T. Whimsy thrown in there. So not that it's reaching even the Bumblebee standard. So they team up with a smuggler, who is an ex-military man played by Chris Pratt, and he has a wisecracking sentient robot sidekick too. And they go on this adventure to see if they can find her brother or where he is. And it's all in the backdrop of this sort of. It's set in the early 90s. There's been
the best year of the 90s, may I add?
94?
That's the one.
That's the year. Oh, there you go. Guess which one of us was born then.
The Messiah.
The Messiah? Alex the Messiah, born in 94 when this movie was set. So like the start of this movie kind of does a lot of very fast exposition where it introduces you to this world where kind of the invention of AI and robots kind of came very quickly to the point that there was a conflict between man and robots, and humans won. And whenever they won that conflict, they segregated the robots and machines into this sort of area of America. And
the exclusion zone.
The exclusion zone.
Yes. They built a wall It's very heavy. It's very heavy-handed with its metaphors, but they built a wall.
It is very heavy-handed with its metaphors. So we also enter this sort of robot tech tycoon, Ethan, who is played by Stanley Tucci, who has invented this sort of VR headset where humans can enter into the body of like an operated robot.
Split their brain.
They can live inside their own bodies, do stuff in their normal day life whilst also doing stuff in a robot body. Have I got that right?
Yeah, which led me thinking, like, which one is the conscious one? Which one am I living? But I guess technically you're living both.
Yeah.
This is what I think, as somebody who doesn't watch Severance, this is what I think the plot of Severance is.
I don't watch Severance either, and I will go, yeah, sure, whatever you say, Alex. Like, that's how they won that robot-human war, was that they were able to weaponize that feature. But obviously, after the war ended, the technology was available in people's homes, so people got addicted to staying in their VR sets.
Yeah, the goofiest looking VR headsets. But I get it. It's in the 90s. I guess that was the idea, but it does look very silly.
I think they're trying to go for like, what would Sega or Nintendo make their VR headset look like in the 90s when they were like being very creative and very, didn't know how these things would look. Yeah. That's the setup for the story. The story is pretty simple. It's crazy how simple it is when I go and think back about it. Remembering how disengaged I was with the story. And even though I had my finger on the pulse all the time, I felt like I was being confused. I felt like I was zoning out. I don't know. There's something about this film wherever it's a script, the performances, I feel like basically everyone apart from maybe Tucci is checked out. Like, I checked out of this film or just going through the motions. So I never felt like from the beginning I was logged in. I was struggling to onboard myself the entire time. There's so many, I don't know, it's pacing, it's acting, it's everything for me, Alex.
It does. I feel like it gets caught up in the exposition because you're right. It is so simple, but it gets really like convoluted with the details of its simple story. How things are happening and why things are happening. I just found myself zoning out. There's quite a few moments in the film which are like quite heavy exposition dumps, and they're not super interesting.
Yeah.
So I did find myself zoning out. And everybody's just kind of playing like an archetype of something they played before. Giancarlo Esposito plays the villain. Millie Bobby Brown plays the young girl in a period of time that's full of nostalgia once more. And Chris Pratt plays basically Star-Lord, who's even more crossed with like a Han Solo type, because he even wears like a black jacket the whole time. Like nobody needs to try very hard here. They've all done this before. They're all kind of running on autopilot a little bit.
Yeah. I feel the film introduces sentimentality very, very early. Like in the first 5 minutes, the movie's already kind of really trying to pull on our heartstrings. And the question I loud said to myself when I was watching the film is like, why do I not care? I do not care about anything. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not emotionally invested. The movie thinks we're so emotionally invested. All the musical needle drops of like, which are so on the nose in this film. You got the Clash, I Fought the Law. You got, Breaking the Law by Judas Priest. There's a lot of law breaking in this film.
My Robot Brother.
My Robot Brother.
I'm joking. That's not a song. Might as well have been though. If there was a song called My Robot Brother, it would have been in there.
I Will Survive and Don't Stop Believing, Wonderwall. They're all here.
Yes, that Wonderwall moment. Very odd.
What a way to. Well, that's how the movie closes.
Yeah, I don't think that's a spoiler for anybody. We'll go into spoilers later. Yeah. For anybody who's wondering, that's not really a spoiler. Just Wonderwall plays at some point in a bit of a remixed version of itself.
Yeah. 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 I mean, yeah, you got along the way, you got like Coleman Domingo for 5 minutes, for 1 minute.
Yes, I forgot. This is why I think, like, between just having cameos from lots of people, and then I think it was the Russo brothers' decision, not so much the book's decision, to incorporate like real trademarked things into robots. So, like, between the product placement of it all, it's got to be, maybe that's where the budget's ballooning.
Yes, because like Chris Pratt's character Keats is like an obsessive collector as well. So there's a lot of like winks to the audience. It's like, oh, if you're around in the '90s, you probably know what he's on about. So there's a lot of nostalgia pulling going on too.
Yes, a lot of like nods to 90s toys and 80s toys and stuff like that. Lunchboxes, G.I. Joes, the whole thing. Like, we've seen it before. It's getting boring.
And Woody Harrelson playing Mr. Peanut. I mean, they must have cost them like $10 million just to get the rights of Mr. Peanut alone. You know, the guy is like a treasure.
Exactly.
An icon.
Exactly.
He's
don't know what of, though. It's a very American thing, Mr. Peanut, isn't he?
That character, when I saw him, genuinely unsettled me.
He's like the Aslan of robots.
He is, but like he just looks so creepy. I just wanted him. I was like hoping that he would be destroyed soon in the movie. When they took his hat, ripped his hat off his head, that's screwed onto his head. They make a point about that early on in the movie, and when it was ripped off him later on in the film, I was like, oh please let this be the end of this guy.
Just so unnerving. Yeah, the robot designs are strange. I will say they still look good. I think. Like, they still look good within the film, like tangible effects. Nothing ever felt too CGI. There was a couple like green screen moments I thought looked a bit odd, but for the most part, I thought the film never thought the robots looked. Maybe it's because they're Uncanny Valley. I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say. Like, they looked good as a computer effect, but maybe that was helped by their kind of cartoonish nature anyway, that the whole film, was not our world per se.
Yeah. It's kind of like it's going for this like Fallout sort of style aesthetic where it's trying to hit that like Americana 1950s, like you said, product placement, Coca-Cola advert crossover sort of aesthetic. But it just comes across, Garrett. What did you think of like, I think the main central focus of this movie where it really wants you to be invested is the relationship between Millie's character, Michelle, and her, supposed little brother in the robot costume. And he's the poster of the movie, which is just this giant, like almost smiley ball face. It's like that design. It's like I find like, how am I supposed to be I find him kind of creepy. It's like, how am I supposed to be emotionally invested in this like these dead eyes looking at me on the screen? And like, it's odd. I know they're trying to, like I said, they're trying to play it like this whole E.T. extraterrestrial thing where it's just like, oh, isn't this quite cute and quite weird that we got this fumbling little robot, and it talks like Bumblebee, like you say. But it just did not work for me. And I feel like, not to bash on Millie's performance, but I really feel like she's going through the motions. And similar to what we talked about the other week on the show, I feel like Millie Bobby Brown's perfect whenever she is kind of similar to her sort of real life persona, which is quite outgoing and slightly precocious. But like, I feel like when she's doing something like Enola Holmes, where she's just embodying herself, I think she's perfect at that sort of thing. And when here, I just don't, I don't buy her as the Winona Ryder light, sincere kind of actor. I don't think that's her strength.
No, I agree, but I don't think that the film ever really allows the time for her to kind of breathe. Like, I wasn't even, I must say, I went into the film not really knowing much about the plot, so I was a little bit surprised when I found out the robot was the brother in those early scenes. I was like, oh, that's what we're doing. But then from that moment on, I was like, oh, I know exactly where this film is going this whole time. But I don't think it ever allows for, like, characters are just very kind of one note. I never warmed up to their relationship as girl and robot. Like, that was never like an emotional thing for me. I know they don't really spend a lot of time on it. the robot just kind of fumbles around whilst they're trying to get to places. He never feels like, oh, it's Millie Bobby Brown's brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't put the two and two together until they mention it, and then you, oh yeah, he's the brother, but I don't really know who the brother is, so it's difficult to know if the robot's got like a defining trait at all or anything like that. So I don't know, just like that stuff. Like it just honestly, like I just saw where the film was going, and it went exactly where I thought it was going, and like I just kind of went through the motions.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like we're kind of going around in circles in terms of how we feel about the movie, because it is a little bit of a bummer to kind of relive it in your head. And I feel like I like this movie a lot less than you do. I feel like you don't like the movie, but I feel like I'm just like another level below you. Like I felt
you hate it.
Well, I texted you after the film. This is like a weekend. It's 10 o'clock at night, and usually, this bad boy's got another 3 hours left in the tank. I'm gaming after a movie at 10 o'clock. I texted you saying, this movie bummed me out. I'm going to bed. It made me so tired. It's so, honestly, there was 10-minute sections of this movie where I was just like, I have no fucking idea what Ki Kwan just said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, I cannot tell you a single line of dialogue that happened in this movie. No, not one. It actually, comparatively compared to my experience with another film I didn't like recently, the Captain America Brave New World, that made that movie look like kind of a masterpiece to me.
Oh, wow, a masterpiece. I thought you were about to quote some line from Captain America then. I was like, oh, which line did he remember?
I don't know. It's Red Hulk time or something.
Yeah. They come in red? They're not usually red.
Red Hulk's policies for New America are something. Yeah. Smash.
Something smash. The Constitution, smash.
Yeah. On Altogether, like I went into work and I said, like, because I know people watch things on Netflix. I'm like, if you someone that actually hadn't even heard of it, I'm like, stay the hell away from this movie. That's how I feel, Alex. It's really rare. I think the last time I felt this insulted by a film was probably Ghostbusters Afterlife, where these sort of kid wannabe Spielbergian early 90s movies that just are completely failing to understand what makes those movies work. They just honestly, they're some of the hardest pieces of film to get through.
Yeah. It is. I keep coming back to this with Marvel. Mm-hmm. We're spending this amount of money. What are we trying to say? What is the story? And if you're trying to say something about capitalism, if you're trying to say something about the Trump presidency, like it's all been done before and so much better than this.
Yeah.
So why are we spending so much money? It's not like a nuanced film or anything like that. There are plot points in this which just confused me. And I want to talk about the end with you in a bit.
Yeah.
Because there are moments I'm just like, I don't understand what is happening.
Do you ever feel like that's a really good question that you ask there, actually? Like, is this movie, what is the point? Because I was wrestling with that question the whole time watching The Electric State, where I was like, do the Russo Brothers think that they are making like popcorn junk? That's fine. That's fine if you can do that. Are they purposely doing that? Or are they trying to make something profoundly moving? And there's a strange sort of arrogance and confidence that the movie has, especially in its humor and its sentimentality, where it's wrestling with both of these all the time. None of them land. Where I'm like, I think these guys think they're making a piece of art.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody goes into a film hoping to make something.
And then they're too deep.
It is a piece of art, right?
And then they're too deep.
And then they're too deep. I don't know. It's an interesting one with the Russo brothers, and they're also collaborating here with Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who they wrote the Captain America films, and they also wrote the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame.
Sure.
Double bill. And the Russo brothers like thrived in that area. So like I'm wondering why they're not thriving outside of Netflix. So I do think we maybe give them a little bit too much stick, because I was just like, oh, they've made so many bad films since coming out of Marvel. And then I was like, Actually, they've only made the Gray Man and Cherry, and the Gray Man was like meh, and I'm pretty sure Cherry was a bit meh as well.
I feel Grey Man was below meh.
Below meh, probably, yeah. I don't remember loving it. We rated it on the show. I don't remember it much, but I don't remember us rating it highly at all.
But you're right, though. Those Captain America movies, and those later Avengers movies stand up with the best of all the phases of the MCU. I feel like most people would agree. Yeah.
Easily. I think they work best when they've got like real characters ready to go and they're able to play within a sandbox.
Sure. That makes sense. That's the one difference, isn't it? Yeah.
And I think there's something about having all the rules taken away with Infinity War, where they could do whatever they wanted because it was all basically going to be like retro. What do you call it? Retrograde? Not retrograded. Retracted.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm saying. Retracted in the next film. And you can see the difference there. Like, Endgame is a fan service film, and it doesn't work nearly as well as Infinity War, in my opinion.
But the beauty of it is that you've had like 20 odd films to like have that payoff where you're allowed the indulgence of shaking your fist at the screen and being 100%. Happy for everybody. Yeah.
Satisfying payoff, even if it doesn't work as well on a story basis. Like, very satisfying payoff.
Yeah.
But Infinity War, that's one of my favorite Marvel films. And I think that works so well because they have just been given comic book characters and gone, just do whatever you want with them. Because, by the end of A, they will be in B anyway. So, like, you can kill some of them, do this, do that.
Yeah.
Like, play around. And I think they get to play around in that world with ready-made characters. I think that works. I think here they're like, all right, you've got a book, so you have to go from A to B. Like, the kid is the robot, and you got to find the kid. So go ahead, go do it. And they're like, well, these characters are one-dimensional, and they're still one-dimensional by the end of the film. And whether that was in the writing or the directing or the editing or the producing, who knows? I don't want to say anybody was the person who messed up with the emotional strands of these films, but it just doesn't work here.
I think that's it. You're hitting a good point where there's a real lack of invested curiosity. You're pretty much told every event leading up to the film in like a 1-minute newsreel that is really quick. And we've explained a whole war that's happened. We've explained who our main characters are, everything, all the disasters that have happened within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the film. And then you're right, we're on this journey for the rest of the movie with girl and robot, and we're going to get some zany characters on the way, and it's just like we know where this is going to go. And then we get this sort of Five Nights at Freddy's sort of freak show when we're introduced to some lovable robots and small soldiers sort of style later on in the film, and it's just blah. It's just blah.
It's blah. I don't think our spoiler section is going to be too big here. But I do want to talk a couple of the spoilers. So, spoiler warning, everybody. Look in the show notes as to the next segment. There's just some stuff in the ending I did not understand. So, we get to the center building where Brother is hooked up to a machine. Because his brain is so smart, they're running all the technology through him, right? That's the idea.
Yeah, he's of such high intellect that they had to use his brain to do stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't make 100% sense.
It's not like really. It's not us misremembering. It's like it's just so wishy-washy with that.
Now, somehow Millie Bobby Brown is able to kind of go within this world where she's speaking to him, right? Like, and they chat.
Yeah, well, it is like a virtual space.
Yeah, virtual space. And basically, it's like, well, if I unplug you, then the whole of center goes down. And that's not good because that's what our technology is based on, right?
Yeah.
But then they decide, no, you should unplug me. But not only should you unplug me, you should take my life support off because I'm bald in the real world.
Right? It's over.
Like, he says something like, I'm not looking too good. Dude, you're not dying, I don't think.
I think they're trying to do a Padme thing where it's like, if I had to be unplugged by this thing, it will kill me.
So then they just decide to unplug anyway, even though earlier it felt like losing all that technology would be a bad thing.
Yeah.
So, and then they have to do...
Maybe it's a sacrifice where it's like, if I'm to exist in this world, my intelligence will always be sought after by corporations, and I am literally like an asset to evil. But I don't like. But what's this whole intelligence thing about? Like, why this boy? What's he able to tap into that? I missed that.
Yeah, he's just
like,
smart.
Why is he to be weaponized?
He's just really smart.
He's like Professor X or something, like a prodigy. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why.
I mean, like, fair, bless his heart, Alex. Stanley Tucci is he is being a complete professional.
Yes.
This whole time, this film, and trying his best to sell whatever he needs to sell.
A nice surprise when he turned up, because maybe I just didn't watch a lot of the promos for this film. I was like, oh, Stanley Tucci is in this. Oh, and he's the villain. Oh, this is great.
Yes, they do a switcheroo where it's like, oh, Giancarlo Esposito is he's the typical bad guy, but no, he's actually, he's all right. He's all
right. Very cool gun. One of the cooler moments of the film, I thought, was that red laser gun he has, which just kind of obliterates everything in its path.
Yeah,
I thought that was a cool gun.
That's your $320 million. I mean, I hate the automatons that they like put people's bodies into, or like project their bodies into, where it's just the screen of their face is flat image. I could never get used to that. I mean, it does not help the actors portray any emotion or performance as well. It's kind of like the Tony Stark, face, but even more limiting than that.
Yeah, and it felt a little bit like it was like, we've got these actors, so you gotta know that's Giancarlo Esposito. We spent a lot of money on him.
Well, that's it, and it's like it's smaller than an iPad. This little screen that you see their face on, and they're never really that close to the screen either. And when Coleman Domingo is like this sort of like punk robot. Like they show he's a punk robot because he's got 3 little punk spikes on his shoulder.
Yes.
Mad Max sort of style. And I'm like, he was so far away from the screen from me. I said to Lauren, is that Coleman Domingo?
Yes. Okay. It's the voice that gave it away before you see him, right?
Yes, that's right.
A great voice.
Yeah.
Been watching him. He plays Norman Osborn in the new animated Spider-Man show they've got on Disney+.
Oh, that's good casting.
Yeah, great voice. Great voice. Really makes the character his own.
I'll tell you what, I'd rather watch than The Electric State. That 100%.
From one big corporate streaming company to another. But yeah, what I was going to say about the ending, Chris, was, wouldn't it be better, because they thought, when it was revealed to the world that a kid had been tested on, that was bad, right? So everybody would have said that was bad anyway. But you could have kept him alive, and she could have, there could have been more restrictions onto how much they can do with that. But then she could have kept visiting him in the virtual space and keeping him company.
Yeah. Yeah, like T'Challa.
She's so quick. She's so quick to kill him.
It is.
He was so quick to kill himself.
There is for a movie that's like, sort of wants to be rooted in a sci-fi logistical way, that there is a lot of odd whimsy and dream logic to this movie that like just does not mesh together really well at all. Like there's a lot of liberties that the movie asks you to take, and luckily I actually think it works in its favor that I wasn't paying attention sometimes, where I'm like, oh, I must have missed something, like it just kind of oddly works in its benefit. I mean, we talked earlier on about the Wonderwall needle drop.
Yes.
It has to be mentioned because obviously the power supply to keeping his body alive is turned off, and the little robot is being thrown away at the end.
Yeah.
And the Wonderwall is playing, and
but like a piano version of it.
Oh yeah. It's kind of like
for a minute you go, is that Wonderwall?
Yeah,
they're playing on the piano, and it's like, yes.
Oh,
yes,
dude, It was very much like, whenever you get a cinematic trailer for like a Call of Duty game or a Gears of War game, like 2 years before you ever going to get gameplay, and they're trying to like get you hyped up about it a little bit. It was kind of like that, but the whole thing is like, ooh, his soul might still be in the robot. There still might be a little bit of hope. That's what I got from it anyway, very
Yes.
overtly.
Yeah, no, I think that is exactly what they want you to think.
And they want you to yell at the screen and go, "Oh my god,
We've got to throw our phones away and not be addicted to technology." That was a message. I guess it didn't come out of nowhere, but it just felt like, oh, that's another message the film was trying to tell. Yeah, I forgot about that. People are addicted to technology now.
Yes, like there was early on before pretty early on in the film, the Millie Bobby Brown's character is kind of in a dingy part of town, and like across the alleyway, instead of somebody lying on the floor with with a needle in their arm, like a drug addict, instead they've got a headset on them, but they're still in like the position of somebody who is inebriated, and it's just like headsets are like drugs. It's just like it's very over the top.
Yeah, it's just clumsy. One would say maybe
Clumsy. Just a little bit. I love to hear if anybody loved this movie, and like, full credit to you. But like, I struggle to think if anybody really like. I would not recommend this to anybody really. I don't think.
No, neither would I. It's yeah, it's just a bit dull, isn't it? I think that's it. It's kind of cold and dull, and yeah, there's a bit of spectacle with the special effects, but nothing to make you go running out and watching it. And Netflix does seem to be doing this a lot recently, where they just like spend a lot of money on a project that isn't interesting.
Sure.
And I don't know how it makes money for them. Like I find that a bit difficult. I'm sure it does somehow, but just doesn't make sense to me to be green lighting these kinds of films, because you could make 30 Anoras with this budget.
Exactly.
30 Oscar-winning films.
You can make 30 Oscar-winning films.
Which I appreciate in the world of capitalism. Anora's not making the same kind of money as like even the latest Captain America film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's for the art, man. It's for the art.
But God, it should. Guys, we took one for the team so that you didn't have to. You can check out The Electric State, though, if you want to, on Netflix. I'm sure if you were going to, you've probably watched it by now. So, yeah. Anything else, Alex? Or is that?
It'll be interesting to see if it did better than...
it's currently performing very well, I think.
I imagine it is. They clearly, like you said, they've chucked a lot of algorithm at it to make sure it pops up on your home screen when you log in.
Oh, well, at least there seems to be a clause at the minute. If you do not watch The Electric State, they will delete your Netflix account.
What was that one that they did with Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot, and
Red Notice?
Red Notice. I was thinking Red One, Red State.
Red. Don't put red in the title of your movie.
Yeah.
It will not work out for you.
I'm pretty sure Red Notice is one of their top performing films ever. I never watched it.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah. But you know what did really well was Carry On from December.
Yes, the Taron Egerton film.
Yeah, that was quite good fun.
I hadn't seen it.
Very silly, but it was good fun.
I just heard a lot of people saying it was a very mid movie, so I was like, I'll catch it at some point. But
you'd have fun with it. I think you'd quite enjoy it.
I like a one-man army. Is it kind of like that sort of film? Is it?
It's kind of a hostage situation. You know,
okay.
You've got Taron Egerton works for the TSA, and he's been given an earpiece. And in the earpiece, he hears somebody say, you've got to put this next bag through without checking it. And if you don't, I'll kill your girlfriend. and he has to make that decision.
Okay, fun
and stuff like that. And yeah, it's very good. It goes bigger and further from there. Like, how does he try to stop this potential terror attack that's going to happen without feeling guilty? Yeah, the whole kind of like cat and mouse things. Very good fun. Very good fun.
Maybe
one of the silliest car crashes you'll ever see in your life in that film. But it's fun.
Look, I'll take silly over boring any day of the week. So bring it on. Yeah,
you'd have fun. You'd have fun with it. Just don't, first 15 minutes I think are quite dull, and then when it gets into it, you're like, yeah, this is silly.
Nice. Okay, now that we finally got that one out of the way, Alex, this is now the section of the show where we catch up with our ongoing series, our blind spots on the Sight and Sound greatest films of all time list. We are slowly making our way down the list of films we haven't seen before, and this week we are on big number 15, according to Letterboxd. Alex, do you want to hear what that movie is? Or do you know already?
I know already.
Is John Ford's, proclaimed masterpiece, The Searchers, starring John Wayne. A film I'm sure, Alex, before, like I've seen this before, you haven't seen it before.
Yep, just a blind spot for myself.
I'm sure you've heard of it for years. Like this is like I feel like this is a movie, when people talk about Westerns, this comes up in conversation pretty quickly.
Do you know what? I won't lie to you, Chris. I am so out of the loop on Westerns that I don't know if I did hear about this film before.
Yeah.
Or if I had, it would have just been kind of like gone over my head.
I think it's like one of those
John Wayne, Western, Good, Bad, and Ugly.
Yeah. I think it's one of those genres is like people who, when they're into it, they have to see everything. I think it's one of those genres which is just a really fun genre to kind of know like the back of your hand, because the timeline of it kind of feeds into itself. But what do you think about the genre in general before we talk about The Searchers? Do you feel like it's underappreciated today? Like, I feel like not enough people, I feel like it's like the leper of like of movie genre. I feel like it's like the old Hollywood musical where it's nobody wants to talk about it anymore unless they're super, super into it.
Yeah, I mean, every now and then you get like one of those kind of like modern day Westerns that like wants to turn the genre on its head a little bit. Not so much.
The one a year theatrical Western,
Yeah, I guess it's difficult for me to kind of put an opinion on it as somebody who's not as well ingrained within the Western genre. I guess it's just like not something I grew up with. I don't think there's a Western film that I particularly hate or despise or anything like that, but I've just not watched that many of them. And I like what I see, but I guess maybe not to the same extent of, say watching Star Wars when I was a kid and then being like, well, I now have to watch every sci-fi ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just, nothing took me over in the same way. I guess you have that thing of like, they are dated maybe slightly, maybe more so than some other films.
Sure.
But yeah, I like the Westerns I've seen.
It's like, I think it just appeals to a certain type of person. Maybe I do really like the romanticized version of like of the Wild West, particularly in like John Ford films and Hard Hawks, as opposed to even like I think Sergio Leone and like the spaghetti westerns were like my first love as a kid. Because I just thought they were so cool and stylish and operatic. And then I kind of just really leaned into how Ford and Hawks sort of like showed a more storybook quality to the Wild West. Like for me, it's almost like the Wild West could be like a different planet. I love how segregated this period of history is from the rest of the world. Like it just feels like it's in this void where when you're watching one of these stories, it feels like nothing else is going on in the world for some reason. It's so oddly isolated, and our characters are so isolated where usually the stakes are so high because there's nowhere you can kind of go without somebody catching up to you or finding out where you are.
Yes.
And And it's just a tough time to live in. And whenever you throw in these like Hollywood ideals about like, you throw in Hollywood humor and the romantic energy that comes from that, it kind of just makes like an alternate version of history that like, it almost feels like that's how we remember the real West, even though that's probably how it never looked. The Western has kind of became how we see that period of history, and I just find it really fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of kind of, obviously you've seen the film before, but you've also seen a lot of Westerns.
Yeah, I've only seen this once before, yeah.
When you think about the Western genre, is this at the top of your list?
So I watched this one pretty young when I was getting into the genre, and I liked this even more. I liked this more than I remembered, and yeah, like for me, when I watch things like The Electric State, and I feel like, oh man, am I just getting like fed up with film? And then I put on the film like this, and I really get that feeling you had when you watched Star Wars for the first time, where I really just get like, I just feel like I'm falling in love. Like I really have that feeling of like butterflies in my stomach. And then when I'm watching this movie and then when the credits roll at the end, I just feel like such serenity. I don't know why. Like I feel like I've just digested a great story with great characters. I love the aesthetic the whole time. I love the musical elements of Westerns. I love I think the 50s is just the greatest decade of cinema. I think if I look at my Letterboxd averages, that seems to prove it, that's my favorite decade. And yeah, I think I'm just a complete slave to the Hollywood machine when it comes to this genre. Yeah, not afraid to admit that.
Where do you stand on John Ford films then?
Well, I would love to become a John Ford completionist, but as everybody who's a John Ford fan will know, the guy made like 3 films a year for like decades upon decades. It's expansive library. Some of them are duds, but some of them masterpieces. This isn't even my favorite John Ford film. I love on my Letterboxd top 4, My Darling Clementine is my favorite Western of all time. And yeah, I do love that John Ford was kind of a liberal filmmaker for his time period. Even though he depicts, and we'll definitely get into in this film, he depicts problematic masculinity and racism and inequalities of women. He was not afraid to kind of balance those issues out in his film and let you as the viewer sort of like digest that and question these characters, as opposed to like other films in the genre, which made it quite tired, where it kind of celebrated these people. That masculinity was something to be cheered and attainable. And yeah, so that's where I think he was profoundly different to an average Western filmmaker.
Yeah, gotcha. I won't lie once again. This is actually my first John Ford film, which I do want to watch more. Because it does feel slightly sacrilegious to have to say that, and having, call myself somebody who loves film, and I've heard of John Ford and I'm aware of him, up there in the pantheon of kind of like great filmmakers.
Sure.
For this to be my first one, apparently his best as well. It's probably not maybe the best way to start things. I don't know, or a great way to start things.
Sure. I mean, like, have you? I thought you watched. Did you watch Stagecoach? That's a John Ford film.
No, I've not seen Stagecoach.
I mean, like, yeah, like he's had great films, like from the 30s. You got Stagecoach. You got like The Quiet Man in the 50s with John Wayne again, The Grapes of Wrath. He always dealt with very broad, novelistic sort of subjects, and yeah, like he's not like this. I feel like you could say 20 of his films you could argue is his greatest. I just feel like this one just managed to get itself in the conversation a lot, and
sure,
mostly because of its central character. John Wayne also, if we want to dive into a little bit of John Wayne, he was somebody who was like, obviously he was a stunt actor. He was a stuntman before, and he got into the industry because of that, and they kind of discovered that he kind of had an act a knack for acting. And so he was another person, kind of like Ford, where for every great project there was like 5 duds. Like I've seen John Wayne be like a Mongolian and still do his, the Searchers Wild West accent, but with like a pretty bad Mongolian mustache on him at the same time.
Oh dear.
So there's
famously not as liberal as John Ford.
Famously not as liberal, but perhaps why he
works so well in this role.
Yeah, exactly. But there is something, I feel like people like Ford, people like Hawks were able to make films great enough where John Wayne could really lock in. When he was locked in, I feel like he doesn't do too much. I feel like John Wayne never needs to overact. He just needs to stand there in his 6'4", bulking presence and just blurt out whatever line he has to give, and it's enough. Like you do watch the movie, like you watch The Searchers, and you're like, that guy was a freaking movie star. Anyway, should we get into the plot? Alex, would you like to introduce the plot of The Searchers?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's pretty dour, isn't it? So you have John Wayne playing a Civil War veteran who returns many years after the Civil War to kind of his brother's homestead in the West.
Yeah,
and I can't remember their exact reason. Was it dead cattle?
So he returns. He returns home, and kind of starts to get integrated with the family. But there has been like a sighting. A lot of their cattle have been murdered, and have been peppered throughout the land. That they kind of go on a search hunt to kind of discover why they've been murdered. But it turns out that this is just a trap, like a lure to get them away from the homestead, so that the Comanches can get the brothers' family and kidnap the young girls and massacre the rest of the family while they're away.
Yeah, a pretty heavy opening, really, isn't it? The massacre of a family, which is very kind of like when you first meet them, a great opening shot as the wife of his brother kind of opens the door. Do you know there's like theories around like whether they had a thing and the young daughter is John Wayne's? Do you know about all this?
Oh no, you know more about than me. Yeah,
he's quite tender with her. She's obviously the one who greets him, not the brother and stuff like that.
The girl he plays, Debbie, the youngest daughter.
Yes, yeah. But the wife greets him at the door in the opening, not the brother.
Yes,
and to him that's just a woman that his brother married. Surely, he kind of kisses her on the head quite tenderly at one point, and I think there is a line that people attest when I was doing some kind of reading into the film afterwards, where he kind of mistakes one of the daughters, and he kind of like his first interaction with Debbie is there's almost like a split second of realization, apparently.
Okay.
So also leads as to why he would become so obsessed with rescuing her, potentially. It's all theory, Chris. It's all theory, but it adds more to the film. Very interesting. Anyway, so yeah, the young girls get kidnapped, don't they? And that leads to a very long 5-year quest to get them back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, over every sort of terrain possible.
Yes.
Free desert, free snow.
To his side, Jeffrey Hunter plays a guy called Martin, who is he just friends with the family?
So he was sort of adopted into the family. I'm pretty sure when he was young, he is part Native American himself, a small part of him.
An eighth Cherokee, it's pointed out, I think, which bloody John Wayne, his character is very racist. He hates
100%
Native Americans. Within this time period, they would just call them Indians and stuff like that.
Yes. He's a proper Confederate boy.
Proper Confederate boy. Didn't surrender. We don't know why he spent so long to come home after the Confederate War.
He still wears his uniform. As
soon as Martin like comes into the family room, he can sniff out immediately that he's an 8th Cherokee. He's just like, "Who are you?" Just like hates him almost immediately.
Yeah.
And he just like, yeah, he doesn't play a very nice character at all. But I think that is kind of the point of the film, right?
He doesn't play a nice character at all. And like, I think that marries well. Like, when you were watching the beginning of this movie, where you kind of like gritting your teeth whenever the kidnapping and the massacre happens, you're kind of like, oh no, is this what the movie's going to be? Is this going to be like a really bad, like a completely demonizing depiction of Comanche people? And but obviously later on it becomes a lot more complex than that, as does Ethan's character. I do believe, like, I don't think this movie ever is an optimism of a racist character. I do think it is a slow condemnation of this person, although it does want to show that people of this caliber also do have shades of grey within them too. I think it's a very complex character.
It is. I think the film, with my modern eyes, doesn't always do enough to demonize John Wayne's character.
Yeah.
I think it's quite a struggle at the start to know whether we're supposed to, like, you know, worship him as the hero or not, and whether his kind of racist hatred is a good thing because it's fueling the capture. Like, he's the only person with the means to be able to stand up to the Comanches and get Debbie back. You know what I mean? Like, I struggled at times to know, you know, John Ford wasn't hitting me on the head with like, he's bad, which I know we've, you know, other films today we've described don't always like things that are heavy-handed, but I felt like this needed a slightly heavier push at times, maybe.
Yeah, because there's also an element of humor in what he does.
That being said, it didn't kind of take away from my enjoyment. You gotta, you know, there is an element of kind of meeting this film in the 50s as well and just kind of going with it. And I do think that the story that this film, the journey that it goes on, is really interesting. It is maybe not as in-depth as I would like it to be. I could almost see somebody remaking this film now and making it maybe a stronger kind of character study.
Interesting.
And really kind of getting in deep with those characters and understanding what was going on. But there is no doubt that I'm enjoying myself. You know what I mean?
Yes, like, I know what you mean.
It's almost like the story is cool, but the execution is maybe not exactly where I'd want it. But, you know, you have this amazing Western setting. Is it Monument Valley, isn't it? All shot in VistaVision on Technicolor.
Oh, the colors are beautiful in this film. Yeah.
And just like the way the mountains just impose upon the characters as we're moving across this land. Just fascinating. Great music. You know, you are fully there with wanting to rescue Debbie. You know, it's a kidnap plot, taken essentially in the West.
I feel like even beyond the VistaVision, the wide landscapes, I love the interiors in this film too.
Oh yes,
I love every little log cabin we go into in this movie. It's just like, it's just like so. Like, we obviously that's a trope in Western film, but in this film particularly, they just look good. Like the sets, I would chill in one of those. I want to sit in front of one of those fireplaces.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. Like the house at the start, like the internal shots. Like you almost get like a 10-person family all sat around a table in one shot.
Yeah,
it looks great and it feels cinematic. You just feel like I don't see shots like that anymore. But then there's also like this film's quite theatrical in a way, in the way it's presented, in the way it's acted. Some of the kind of subplots going on feel tonally a bit, I don't want to say out of place, but like feel more in place with like a theater show,
like the wedding,
some of the comedy that's used. I think anytime we cut back to the family of the girl that Martin is kind of courting, and sometimes not courting for many years because he just drops and leaves.
Sure. Vera Miles' character Laurie, yeah. I really like. I enjoy that light touch. That's just something for me. Like I find that humor very endearing. Maybe it is, like you said, the film has a dour plot to it, And I think Ford is keen to always, in all of his films, is always keen to kind of put a little bit of a light touch to kind of balance it a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's there's a fight scene later on with with Martin and this other guy kind of trying to vie.
The singer.
The singer. He's a little bit, and this pathetic fight that happens is pretty great. There's a lot of really good side characters, and you're right with the whole theatrical element. Like the very beginning when Ward Bond, who plays the Reverend, comes into the film for the first time, and he's already kind of like, we already get this sort of impression that he is part of the family dynamic and comes to visit often, comes to sit at the table straight away, and has his opinions and goes off on one. And then we have Ethan come in, we have all the girls doing their thing, and there's that theatrical element where 10 people are doing multiple things on the screen at once, but none of them are in focus. And I do love how just casting my eyes across the screen and trying to, root through that. That's a lot of fun. That is a lot of fun. There is,
that if it was made today, though, I feel like that whole thing would be cut out, right? I don't think you'd have as much fun and comedy in a film. Like, I'm not John Ford, so I'm wrong here. But if I was making this today, this would just be about John Wayne and Martin.
It's confidence.
I call John Wayne, but really it's Ethan and Martin. Really, I should be calling him by his character as well. But yeah, it would all be about Ethan and Martin for me, out in the wilderness for 5 years. And I think I would maybe like push a little bit more on the time element, because it would be like 2 years have passed. And I was like, are you kidding me? What? This has been going on for how long?
There is a little bit of that where it's just like, okay, yeah.
We've been
Yeah.
in it for a while.
Yeah, there is no obvious title card. Yeah. I guess it displays that geographically for the landscapes a little bit, but like there's nothing like telling you what time has passed at any point. And we'll talk a little bit about, like we said, the depiction of the Comanches at the start almost seems demonizing, but I really do think it's, when you watch a lot of Westerns from this period, Alex, like there is a lot of insensitivity. It's a really big part of the genre. And I feel like the more Westerns you watch, the more you appreciate this for how it depicts. Like there is no depiction of the Comanches doing anything any worse than any white man has done in this film. By any sort of stretch of the imagination. We find out later on that the attack on the homestead at the beginning of the film was actually a revenge plot within itself. We have this lead Comanche chief, Scar,
yes,
who is kind of like the figurehead that we follow and kind of are tricked to believe to be the big bad of the movie. And we kind of get this realization at the end of the film that his sons were murdered by a group of white men, and which kind of, is part of the bigger picture and was a straw that broke the camel's back and kind of endeared him to kind of launch that attack. So it's showing that there's no smoke without fire, for sure. And that brings out a lot of interesting things too. I do find it interesting though that the lead Comanche actor is played by a white man.
Oh my god! Despite the fact that so many of the supporting cast of characters are played by like actual Native Americans, it's like
pretty sure all of them are. Yeah,
it does feel like at times where it's like, John Ford, you were so close. You were so close. It's a murky kind of, the way he handles all the kind of plots is a little murky. And again, I guess you just got to take it with a pinch of salt. There's only like one truly uncomfortable moment in it for me, which is when Martin, through I think was it like almost like a language of errors, isn't it?
Yes, he thinks he's bartering for some for some embroidery, and he ends up actually entering into a marriage.
Yes, ends up getting a Comanche wife who follows him around. Ethan makes fun of her.
Gives her a nickname, Luke.
Yeah, it's surprisingly more like nice to her than he was to Martin at the start in a weird way. I don't know. That whole relationship goes a bit weird for a second. And then there's this moment where Martin just like is like frustrated with her as they go into bed, and he just boots her down the hill. And it just comes out of nowhere. There is no doubt. There is an element of you is just like, it's so shocking. It's kind of funny, right?
Yes. I mean, like, she literally goes about 20 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so uncomfortable. So
Yes.
so uncomfortable at the same time. Just like, there are moments in this film which I think detract from its masterpiece status.
But it is something that Ethan would do. Like,
but that wasn't Ethan in that. That was Martin. Martin kicks it.
Well, then, yes, of course. But like I guess Martin would by proxy too. I mean, he's almost endeared by Ethan's presence to kind of almost at that point of the story. Martin does build up a real like hatred towards Ethan as the story goes for the years. But at the beginning, there is sort of like I know my place, and I'm trying to be the white man that you want me to be.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. But yes, even with that narrative like defense, it's still played. It is played for laughs. It is played for laughs for sure. But I feel like that is a small moment in the film, Alex, that like otherwise I do feel that the rest of the movie is demonizing Ethan enough or festering an opinion about him enough that by the end of the film, especially that final shot of the film, is completely, we close the door literally on where we should feel about this character, which is kind of like this sad sack of a man who maybe one day would have been the envy of everybody, and but there's no place for this sort of person in this kind of forward-looking West anymore. Like the days of this type of person are coming to an end, and like at the end, like he saved the girl. He's done everything. He's literally delivered her home, and nobody comes to greet him. Like nobody comes to greet him at the door. He just walks away, and kind of like a ghost. And no, it's like nobody wants anything to do with him. It's a fascinating shot.
He's a man who's lost everything, and in the process of trying to get some of it back, he loses himself, doesn't he? When they first find Debbie, and Debbie doesn't want to leave, the tribe that she's in.
Yes, played by Natalie Wood. Yes,
played by Natalie Wood. He decides that she's better off with a bullet in her head, and plans on killing her.
That was so crazy.
That's the big turning point, isn't it? And even that's where Martin's just like, "Whoa, that's mad."
It's so confusing, and then but Ethan's also built up an inner sort of affection for Martin in a way that's kind of like closed off as well, because at one point he tells him that he's going to give him his will when he passes, and it causes big conflict too. And there's moments of him bantering with Martin as well, as if he's seeing him as a human being for the first time. And so yeah, it's really complex. I mean, I find for a movie of the 50s, like I quite like how it's not explicitly telling you what's going on in Ethan's head all the time. It's this man is like, there's 20% of a chance that this guy could adapt and maybe see the error of his ways, but he's too far down the path.
Yeah. I'd love to know what he was doing for those 3 years after the war.
I mean, probably stuck in some hole drinking, maybe being like a bit of a militia guy. I could see him getting involved in things, but probably working on some cattle ranch or something like that. But it is fascinating. I do like that space the film gives you to kind of ponder a little bit, but also it's just so beautiful to look at. I find like every shot in this film absolutely gorgeous. I love the aesthetic. Like I said, I love everything about this film visually. So I do forgive its shortcomings, and I do feel like when it comes to depictions of Native Americans, it is kind of one of the better depictions out there. So it allows me to be a little bit more forgiving, and I try to cast myself in that 1950s headspace. But Yeah, it can be difficult sometimes.
It can be, and I think I probably struggle with that more than you do at times. But obviously that you have like this great nostalgia for the genre as well. But I'm not poo-pooing this film. It's difficult not to point out things at times. But again, I think it's grand and epic, and I think its story really wants to be thoughtful, and I appreciate that for a film like this. I think it's a really slick 2 hours, and I was hooked. I was hooked throughout.
Nice. Oh, glad you enjoyed it, man.
I did enjoy it. Big influence on Star Wars as well, which I think is fair to see. Obviously the Lars, Uncle Owen, and Aunt Beru in the Lars homestead.
Oh, sure.
Very similar shot to the kind of burning home that Ethan and Martin come back to in The Searchers here. And apparently Anakin's kind of I guess tirade on the Sand People in Attack of the Clones is heavily inspired.
I done?
Yeah. Not just the men. Is kind of heavily inspired by kind of Ethan's own kind of, I guess, blind rage within this film as well. So there you go. It's very influential. Very influential. Maybe I'm a little surprised how high it up is compared to something like when we watched The Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Or Once Upon a Time in the West, was it?
Oh, yeah, sorry, not Good, Bad, and Ugly. Once Upon a Time in the West.
Same
which
director.
I thought I was a lot more kind of taken on by, despite it being a lot longer and a lot kind of slower, but it was very musical. I really liked it.
Yes, well, that movie benefits by just having a horrible, conniving villain, and that's all you have to wrestle with. So I guess there's less to query with that film, which makes it a little bit more, and it's more. I mean, it's just spectacle, isn't it? Spectacle and sound.
Yeah. Which one do you prefer?
That's really hard. I put them kind of level, but they're both hitting completely different needs.
Yeah,
that's a mood thing for sure.
Yeah,
I come here for story, but I sometimes I do just put on like I love Jill's theme, which is a piece of music from it where we're introduced to that character for the first time in Once Upon a Time in the West, and you talked about it on that episode where she leaves the train station and the camera pans up and you see this whole town. And it's a really operatic moment, and just see her on this coach just go across the valley, and it's one of the most beautiful pieces of Western film ever shot, to be honest. So sometimes I'll just put that on just to watch that scene and then go away from it. But I put them on level playing fields. It's a mood thing. I think I am more of a John Ford, Howard Hawks Western person than a spaghetti Western, because I like the whimsy a little bit more. I like the theatrical element a little bit more. That's just me. But I think they're both worthy to be on the list, man. I mean, I'll chuck another 10 Westerns on there either way.
More Westerns.
All Westerns.
Yeah. Maybe, I know every episode we've been pondering what do we do after this, after we finish this series.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we are definitely more inclined to have shorter series where we do a portion of films like the Fast and Furious films. But I would love for you to just be like, watch 10 Westerns. Like let's get into the Western film for a bit.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
Ingrain me a little bit more into that world.
Sure.
I feel like I'm missing out. But I'm definitely gonna watch some more John Ford films now.
Nice.
I feel like I'm missing out there.
Yeah, I would definitely check out My Darling Clementine. I'd love to see what you think about that. That one's a little bit more less problematic. It's the Wyatt Earp story, but I think it's the best. That was kind of an obsession. Like, I think there's like 10 to 15 Wyatt Earp films by the OK Corral gunfight, and that for me is the best one. So yeah, I love you check out that.
And just to continue our streak of mentioning David Lynch on every episode of the podcast this year, it is John Ford who he plays at the end of Fabelmans, right?
Yes, that's correct.
With the eye patch, yeah.
And were you
teaches
thinking about the
Spielberg-
Horizons thing when you were watching the movie? And it actually stood up to that test when I was watching it.
Interesting. I thought some of the exterior shots, I was like, the horizon's in the middle there, man.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Actually, for 90% of the shots, the horizon is in the middle.
Yeah,
and it looks fantastic.
Yeah, it looks great.
That's good, man.
Two films, one good, one bad. Is that how you'd sum up the episode?
Yeah, none were ugly.
Oh,
that's where I thought you were going with it. You stopped.
Wait, let me start again. One good, one bad, and you are ugly?
I guess I kind of am.
Oh no, you've saddened me now. We are taking a very short break next week. Don't worry, everyone. Just a 1 week break.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a planned break because by doing this break, it'll stop us from having less breaks in the future. It'll all make sense. I promise.
For sure.
But yes, we're getting some things planned in. And our episode following the break should be a pretty exciting one. We might even be having another special guest. Do we reveal what that's going to be now?
I mean, sure. There's no point. He's locked in.
He's locked in.
He's contractually obliged.
If a minute of this episode gets edited off in the future, then you'll know something's happened. So we are bringing back Alfie Hunter-Martin to the show, the mastermind behind our new logo and theme tune. And when we brought him on last, we chatted about Madam Web, of all films. And late last year, the Sony Spider-Man spin-off universe died a death. With the conclusion of Craven, to which Sony said, "We're not doing any more of this."
This isn't working, right?
It's taken 10 films, but this isn't working. And so what we're going to do is, I guess, a bit of a send-off to the Sony Spider-Man films. You, myself, and Alfie have all been busy finishing off the ones we haven't seen before. We're going to rank them. We're going to talk about the history of why they came to be, how they came to be, and the kind of inner workings of Marvel Studios and Sony. And go into that in what I think is going to be a pretty fun episode. I can't wait to record it. So, 1 week break and then a big bumper extravaganza as we say farewell to those, what do they call them? Like spunk or something like that, was it?
Jesus.
They called the universe something weird. It was like spunk.
A spunk.
I need to, as you can see, I'm still doing research for it.
That's not what I heard. That's not what I heard the first time you said that. I will happily carry, you guys don't even have to help me carry this coffin. I can carry it by myself.
Well, yeah, do you know what? People are calling it spunk. I'm having a look now, spunk. But I mean, Sony want you to use SSU, the Sony Spider-Man universe. But
sure.
Why are they calling it spunk?
Spunk.
Spider-Man universe. Yeah, why are they calling it spunk?
So it's not really a full proper function acronym because spunk, SP is just like
SPUMC
is Spider-Man.
Here you go. Sony. So they started calling it spunk.
Sony Spider-Man.
It stood for Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel Characters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but it's Spider-Man centric though. All of them, aren't they? They're all like in his aura.
Yes. Yeah. They're all Spider-Man villains. Yeah. So there you go.
But it does.
Yeah, I just remember people calling them spunk. I think it was kind of funny to call it spunk.
It is very funny.
It's very funny.
Very mature.
Anyway, that's our next episode. But like we said, we have 1 week. We have a 1 week break. So make sure to go catch up with our previous episodes. You've been missing out on them. You've missed the box office draft. Go listen to it. You skipped a couple of the interviews. You loser. Go listen to it.
Yeah, you're a loser, and it's still relevant. It's actually probably more relevant than it was then. Yeah. So you're missing out.
You're missing out. You heard it there. So join us next week as we welcome back Alfie to the podcast. and say
Can't wait.
farewell to Spunk.
Yes, Alfie will bring some actual grinding to our rambling.
That has been the episode for this week. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review. We do really appreciate it. And if you'd like to keep up to date with us, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Film Angle.
We also have a Film Angle playlist. If you want to listen to what we listen to, you can find that in the show notes. Be sure to catch us next week for more cinematic discussions. But for now, goodbye.